Oregon Community Access. Community is our middle name.
What is the question? I noticed that.
I have no idea.
I'm assuming how far the community is along the community.
Public art committee.
How long are you willing to wait?
It's possible too.
Oh, it just came up? She came to our first one.
What's your favorite time?
All right, everybody, it's 5 o'clock. Good evening. I'm going to call the Village Board of Oregon for Monday, November 14th, 2022 to order. And Candy, if we can have roll call, please.
Sure. Feshin.
Here.
Belo.
Here.
Glish.
Here.
Jacobson.
Here.
Peterson.
Here.
Van Kampen.
Here.
And Wunsch.
Here.
Okay. All right, we'll go to 3, which is approval of October 17, 2022 Village Board meeting minutes, if correct, and corrections of mistakes, if any. I'll take a motion in a second. Amanda, and I see Jenna. Any discussion? See none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Number 4. Public appearances, comments, communications. Items are for discussion, possible action. 4A is recognizing Jenny Nelson, Oregon Library Board President, is Wisconsin Library Association 2022 Trustee of the Year.
So I just want to take a minute. Can you hear me okay, Dan? So I just want to take a minute to celebrate. Each year, the Wisconsin Library Association selects one trustee in the entire state to recognize for their dedication to their community and serving the community's needs. The Wisconsin Library Association serves public libraries, school libraries, academic libraries, tribal libraries, all sorts of different types of libraries. So this year, we were fortunate enough to have Jenny Nelson, our library board president, selected for that honor. So we just want to take a minute to celebrate that and the countless hours she spent alongside each of you in meetings, listening to community members, talking, attending planning commission, library board meetings, planning commission meetings, building committee meetings, steering committee meetings, raising money, baking cookies, baking more cookies, just to strive for excellent library services in our community. So just want to thank each of you for supporting the work that she and our library board does and take a minute to honor Jenny publicly for that milestone accomplishment.
Yep. Jenny, do you want to say something?
Sure.
All right.
It's gotten much better. It's sitting up here not shaking, so that's good. I really do just want to thank the whole village board for working with the library and the library board and allowing us to do all the cool things that we get to do. This is a reflection of the board and Jennifer's leadership, so I really appreciate everybody and I'm really honored to accept this award. So thank you guys.
Thank you. All right, we'll go to 4B, which is presentation from the Oregon Area Historical Society regarding interest in 249-267 North Main Street site. I think Elise is. So Bob, right? Am I right?
Correct.
Yeah, Bob. We'll have 15 minutes. So you're.
All right.
Go ahead.
My name is Bob Block. I am here on behalf of the Oregon Historical Society. And I am a board member of the society. I'd like to tell you a little about the Historical Society, its mission, some Oregon historical facts, and the purpose of this presentation. The society has a website which is currently under reconstruction and will soon be back online, and it will be your source for a wealth of Oregon historical past. We also have a Facebook page in which you can find historical photographs and information and upcoming events such as our Christmas at the Museum, which will be coming up on December 10th on a Saturday. The community is welcome to attend this event, tour the museum, join us in some cookies and hot apple cider, and meet the museum volunteers. The mission of the society is the collection, preservation, and dissemination of materials and information related to the history of the Oregon area. Let me give you some examples that you can find at the museum. In the 1980s, Oregon resident Ida Lumley observed a construction crew dismantling Starbucks blacksmith shop on Main Street, which is in the area of where Pizza Pit is now. She saw many historical homes and buildings being destroyed and was concerned Oregon would lose its past. So in September of 1987, Ida and others formed the Oregon Area Historical Society, which celebrated its 35th anniversary this year. In 1989, Oregon residents Florence Paulson purchased a dilapidated lumber storage building from Chase Lumber for about $30,000 at the intersection of Lincoln and Market Street. And she donated this property to the Historical Society for a museum. With the help of volunteers and others, the building was restored to a museum, and its dedication service was held in May of 1991, which was also the 150th anniversary of Oregon. In 1992, the museum opened to the public for displaying Oregon's historical past. Oregon has other historical districts as well. There's the Lincoln Street Historical District, which is the street the museum is on. It has 5 historical homes that were built between 1870 and 1890. There's the South Main Street Historical District, which consists of 11 surviving commercial buildings built between 1887 and 1915. Also in that district is the World War I monument, which was erected in the village square in 1920 and was the first such monument in the nation honoring World War I veterans. Just down the street is another historical building that is on both the state and national registrar, which is the Water Tower, affectionately known as the Tin Man. The water source for that tower came from the building right next door, which is currently Badger Auto Body Shop. This is an iconic building that is easily recognized by most people in Oregon. But what many people may not know is this building was built in 1890, and it was the home of the Badger Cycle Corporation, which manufactured thousands of bicycles from around 1894 to 1900 and shipped those bicycles all around the world. For 35 years, the Historical Society and the museum have been collecting, preserving, and displaying Oregon's past. We are at the point now where our facility no longer, or soon, will run out of room to continue to do the collection and display. And it was felt that this would be an appropriate time to look for a new location for the museum. The ideal site for the museum would be a historical building that is near or in the downtown area and has a high visibility. The Society is considering 2 such buildings. However, both of them would require significant renovation work. The third option being considered is to purchase a land site and build a new museum. This is where the property at 249 Main Street, currently owned by the village, is intriguing in that it is close to the downtown, has high visibility, and has adequate size for a new museum. The Historical Society is a tax-exempt, not-for-profit 501c3 organization. It would love to receive that property on Main Street as a donation to the society. However, we are well aware of the village's fiscal constraints at this time. Therefore, should the society decide to proceed with the purchase and building of a new museum, we would consider negotiating a purchase price for that Main Street property should the board decide to continue or proceed with that option and make it available to the society. The society is primarily interested in the 2 Main Street facing parcels, which constitutes about 1.2 acres of the total 2.7 acres at that site. However, we have no opposition to a mixed use of that property, with the remaining portion of the property either being sold for development or even to be used as a park. The society is very optimistic that should it purchase and build a museum at this location, it would be enthusiastically received and supported by Oregon citizens, organizations, and businesses. For 30 years, our current location has collected, preserved, and displayed Oregon's past. The Society looks forward to the opportunity of the possibility of purchasing the Main Street property and building a new museum to continue our mission of preserving Oregon's past for future generations. On behalf of the Historical Society, I would like to thank the board for your time and your consideration in our interest of the Main Street property. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see if there's anybody have any questions, or it is a presentation, we can ask questions. All right, Bob, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go to 4C, which is a presentation from the Oregon Sculpture Garden Group regarding the use of 249, 267 North Main. All right, while Ray's getting ready, again, this will be a 15-minute presentation.
If it shows up on the TVs, then we know we're good to go, so.
There's probably a button on the laptop.
Let's see, I think it was, an F8, function F8, I believe, let's try that. Perfect. Okay, we're good, technology. Okay. So we're gonna put a little timer on here for you and me, Dale. That way we're gonna keep ourselves honest. Okay, so let's start. Would you want to introduce yourself briefly? Because, well, first of all, I'll say I'm Ray Vogler.
And I'm Dale Secker.
Okay, if you want to just say a little bit about yourself, Dale, that would be awesome.
Okay, I can say, most of you know me as founder of the Carindale Fruit Farm.
Can you hear him? Okay.
Yep.
Okay? But actually, I've had 10 years of experience with the Soil Conservation, used to be the Soil Conservation Service, now called the Natural Resource Conservation Service. And I was a hydrologist for them. And I have a master's degree in water resource management. And I was asked to come down and look at the site today, so we'll talk about that later, that we're making the presentation here on. And so I can make comments probably following the main presentation.
Perfect. And I'm Ray Vogler. I am now the president of the Friends of the Oregon Sculpture Garden. Just wanted to let you know we have a few developments, very positive, since our last meeting, and that is that we are incorporated. We have an EIN number. We've gone through that whole process. We have mission. We have articles of incorporation, and we have applied for nonprofit status. So we're moving ahead as an organization to make sure that we can help fund and make this park possible. So what I'm going to do is ask one of our members to go up to the board, and I'm just going to walk you through the plan very briefly, and then we maybe could take questions. Now, this plan was put together by a very professional architecture group called Smith Group. They're located out of Madison. They actually have like 113 locations all across the country, and they have also one in Milwaukee. If you've ever been to the Terrace, they are the architecture firm, landscape architects, that created that alumni park, that really beautiful park right down by the water, and then they have all the history relating to alumni and the university. So they have a lot of experience with that. They were not able to be here tonight. They would have been able to be at the meeting last month, but this month there was a family emergency, and then the other architect was away on business. So I'm going to tell you what we know about this. So if you look at the concept plan, does everyone have a copy where you are? Okay, good. So the overall concept of this park is to provide a central park in downtown Oregon, a community space for hosting events and opportunities for all ages, while very much preserving the nature of the land itself. So this particular plan takes into account the natural topography. So as you're looking at the plan, and I'm going to have Susan kind of point to where you come in off of Main Street. Could you show that? So that would be around A. And the thought of the architects, we gave them ideas and they went with it and did a great job. So they see this as a vine kind of weaving through the site, carving out spaces and creating what they call nestled rooms. Rooms or areas throughout the park location. This would be the entire 2.7 acres. Each room or space that they provide is a unique experience to amplify the character already on the site. Again, using the site as it is. And the specimen oak tree is the one that is pretty much the focal point. And you can see that. I don't know if you could point to that, Susan. We'll talk more about that in a minute, too. Now, the primary space is located on Main Street, and we really feel it's vital that the entrance is on Main Street, because we see this not just as a neighborhood park, but a central park for all of Oregon. Now, what you do is as you move through the park, you kind of trickle down, you're going west, and then you go down to these series of gardens, flexible lawns, playground. There's something for everyone. So upon entering the site at Main Street, that's A, the visitors are greeted with a procession of different kinds of experiences. So for example, if you look to the left, you're going to see a sculpture, which is D. That's kind of the entry point. And then this is a whole plaza. Not something we had thought about originally, but as this evolved, you know, as we had hundreds of people responding, we found out that people wanted a nice communal space that they could use in a versatile way. So we're calling this the communal lawn or plaza, and that's C. And we see this as something that where the whole community can organize events, markets. We're talking maybe farmers markets, art markets, festivals around, you know, the holidays or autumn fairs, and something that will help for other areas that maybe can't fit all of that, for example, Triangle Park. But we see this as an extension, actually, of downtown and Triangle Park. Now, if you keep going further, there's a pavilion, that's G, and that's coupled with the specimen bur oak tree, which is O. And if you notice, it's not close to the tree, and what you're seeing in that circle is the whole canopy. So that shows the upper part of the tree, and it also shows all the roots. So we do not want to destroy those roots. The pavilion, which we see doing down the road, not initially in our plan, will be something that is kind of an ode to that tree. Now the site naturally drops in elevation, and the paths wrap around that drop, kind of going northward around that signature tree. And they designed it with stonework. I don't know if you can show that stonework. You know, actually it's kind of like a brown vertical look to it. And that's cut into the hillside to create an outdoor classroom. So again, using the elements of the land itself. The classroom, we were there today, Dale and I, we were saying, hey, this looks like a really good classroom area because it was going down the hill. Then if you continue on the path, there's a butterfly garden, and then there's also kind of an area where people can just relax. And now the lower portion of it gets a little wet, and we wanted to create an opportunity to fix the issues with water. So I might turn a little bit of this over to Dale, and then the two of us can work on that together, explaining some of the water filtration systems. Okay?
Okay, like I said, I was invited this afternoon to take a look at the site. I'm not a taxpayer in the village, of course, but I do have the water resource management experience in my past life, so to speak. And so we're looking mostly from that perspective as to what the proposed improvements would be to help with water management, that is infiltration and so forth, that would help not only the park area itself, maybe some of the surrounding areas as well. And I didn't have, a lot of time to look at this just previously, but to look, basically looking at the map you have and visiting the site and seeing that most of the site is well drained, but we do have that one area up there that we were just talking about toward the end that is quite low, and the architects are suggesting that the soil types be checked, and if they're heavy clay or something, so that the water cannot filtrate quickly, then to remove some of this material, as I understand, and replace it maybe with sand or something, so that you increase the rate of infiltration. That's an important factor here, so we can maintain a place for the water to go, even though the bulk of the site is higher, but the site in here, which has a lot of opportunities for other uses as well, could be well drained, and plants could be put in that could absorb more moisture, and so forth. So there's a lot of opportunities from a hydrological point of view, and from what I reviewed today, it looks like the plan is well conceived in regard to that. I don't know if there's any specific questions that I could answer, but from my perspective, it seems like, and of course I've done that at Carindale Farm too. We did a lot of work, and so I've used my experiences as a water resource management master's degree individual to further, not only my 10 years of actually being in working for the Soil Conservation Service, but also to help improve individual properties, not only in the farm or in other areas in the town of Oregon.
Excellent. And so what I was told, and exactly what Dale is saying, that if you look on the plan, and you'll see kind of that blue-greenish area, it's along the west side, it goes down these paths. There's a primary path, which is white, right, and that's going to be made out of crushed stone. And then the secondary paths are paths that are kind of more intimate, and we're expecting those would be probably shredded bark, at least to begin with. So the part that goes along the area near Johnson Street, which is kind of a blue-green, those are going to be water retention areas that are actually recessed. And if you look at the legend to the right, it's going to say that, water retention recessed areas. So what that really means is that that land will be cut out a little bit, okay, maybe like about 2 feet or so, maybe a little more, and then there'll be plants put in, and this is also, I think, what they might be doing out by the library. Plants put in that can draw that water down, right? Plants that are good in water. For example, Joe Pye weed, swamp milkgrass, so on and so forth. You can put hedges and grasses and forbs and all sorts of plants that can take water. And the whole idea is that the water needs to stay on the property, right? And then and Dale knows all about that, is to stay on the property. So we really decided to have that to be an essential feature of our plan, because we know water's a problem. So what's going to happen is when that water hits those recesses that are planted up, the water will go straight down, and because those are longer roots, and like grass, turf, it'll be absorbed into the soil. Any that would continue down would go into those retention areas at the very end, approaching Johnson, and then those would also drain down more slowly. So we feel we're taking into consideration the water issues, and that we want to make that right for the entire neighborhood. And that is part of like step 1 in our plan. Now, before we go on, any questions? No? Okay, so why don't we go to the next part of the plan, which is you're going to see the top of the hill.
Maybe I'll comment here
Okay.
too, because not only will that proposal help in the park area itself, but it'll help the surrounding areas, because it'll be a magnet for the water drainage.
So Ray, just 3 minutes, you got 3 minutes left, Ray.
Well, okay, so I'm going to do this fast. So, yes, we'll talk about that. So, the part of the plan that I'm looking at right now is we know that people are thinking of possibly using this park or this area as a multi-use function. And we are willing to, work with the board on this. We understand that. So we asked the engineers and the architects to develop a plan where we get the top of the hill. And we feel that that is essential, totally essential for what we want. And I want to explain why. And it'll also go into some of what you're seeing there. We want this to be not a neighborhood park, but a central park. We want this to be a park that brings people to town and downtown. We want this park to be a park where people downtown come to the park. This will be a boon for the business owners, many of whom have already signed on. Every restaurant, that, Ziggy's and Sonny's and so on. Ready Set, Senior Peppers, you name it, they're on board. Froyo. And we hope that that will help their economy, their local economy, because they've had a hard time with the pandemic. So the plaza, if you look at that kind of purple bluish area at the bottom, that is what we are calling an area, kind of a gateway to the plaza. So people come in with food trucks. I can picture like Ziggy's or some of the other places, Froyo, or maybe Little Buddies, And then people could have tents there. That's what those little blue squares are, rectangles. They could have tents. And this could become a wonderful location for all sorts of things. Autumn festivals, produce fairs, events for families, so on and so forth. And we want this to be an area that is in great use. So that's what we would be willing to do if, in fact, people did want to do something multi-use. We think that the top of the hill is essential for what we're trying to accomplish. Dale?
I don't really have anything more to add. I just was here to testify about water resource management, and I think the plan is well conceived for that.
All right, you want to see if there's any questions? Anybody?
How much more time do I have?
You have like 15 seconds.
Okay.
So,
Well, that's good. Well, okay.
how fast can you talk?
Yeah, in 15 seconds, I'm going to tell you, take a look at that piece of paper that has 5 years on it. And you'll notice that in 5 years, we do plan to raise all the funds through pledges, people joining, grants, donations, sweat equity experts, like Dale, for example, like the people who did this plan for us. So we expect that we can handle all of that. And that is our plan. And the thing is, once we get a spot, we can do fundraising, right? We have all these grants in place. Main Street America, I think, just came out. And I can guarantee you that if this is provided to us, we will be successful and we will make this happen. And it will be a great success for Oregon, too. It'll put us on the map. And it'll be great for the economy. Thank you.
And if you have not done so, please look at our website. It has a lot more detail.
All right, anybody? Yep, Amanda?
Yeah, so I just want to clarify, with this proposal, what you would be asking of the board, should we decide, you would like the land set aside for the sculpture park, but then you would fundraise for all the landscaping and the park amenities itself, and does that include maintenance going forward, like mowing and that kind of stuff?
Yes, yes. And I will say, if you
Okay.
look in the audience here, I'm not going to yell here too loud. We have master gardeners, we have master naturalists, we have people who know how to do this work, and we also have committees just waiting. People on committees right now. So we will make it happen, and we also have pledges already of all sorts of plants, seeds, you name it, we have it. People want to do memorial benches already, memorial benches.
Memorial trees.
Memorial trees, yeah, it's all there, it's just waiting to happen. And then, if you want to take a look at the final picture, this is what we're promoting. A beautiful place, if you can see it right there. Mr. Schiff. That's how it would look from Main Street, and that would invite people.
Put it up there.
Yes.
Can you guys see it?
Yep.
This is Main Street, looking in, here's the pavilion, you're looking up on Main Street.
So it would invite people in who are just driving by.
All right. Other
Thank you.
questions, comments? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. We're very excited.
No, this is not input from the committee. We're going to go to public comment in a minute. So, all right, so we are on, well, let's see, we'll let Ray. All right, we'll go to 4D, which is public comment. We have a total of 15 minutes for this item. This part of the agenda allows members of the public to provide information to the village board, including items both on and off the agenda. We have a 3-minute time limit for everybody, so if somebody wants to come up. Ann, are you going to speak? You want to start us off?
I'm not used to microphones. Okay, is it started?
Go ahead. You bet.
I'm Ann Michaels, and I live at 630 Southwoods Edge Drive, and I have lived in the village for about 10 years now. And in that time, I've experienced some really great asking the board to and my hope in work with you. This summer, I attended the open house of the North Main, as well as the comment and surveys. I was able to review all the surveys that came in last month, as well as reading the village comprehensive plan. And I believe that my organization, Green Pastures Living, our plans can really align with some of the village's key planning objectives, which is, one is to explore new ways to ensure housing types and affordability options for all levels. I believe our housing plans can include the green space, offer public art for all people to enjoy the residence, as well as hitting that key community gathering space downtown. So I want you to consider the collaborative possibilities with Green Pastures Living during future village board meetings. I founded Green Pastures Living 3 years ago. Our incorporation date was just yesterday. I founded it right here in Oregon, and it is a nonprofit for affordable housing. We provide small-scale independent housing for middle-class seniors who need to transition from their lifetime home to one that's more accessible and sustainable, so that they can age in place in a familiar community where they can and also be in green and growing environment. I'm confident that we can work together to achieve the village's goals, hear the residents' feedback, and retain its valuable citizens so they can remain engaged and supported here in the village. I've already been working with other communities who also see this need, but of course I'd love to do it right here in my hometown. I thank you for your time and service to the village, and I look forward to doing more groundbreaking opportunities with you, and I look forward to what the next steps are in working together. Thank you.
Thank you. Elise, help me time-wise. Okay. Thank you, Ann.
Was that 3 minutes?
That's it.
Thank you.
You got it. Perfect. All right, next. No one's next? Is that it? Okay. All right. We'll go on to 5 then. Is approval of vouchers in the amount of $1,643,274.85. I'll take a motion in a second. Got from Mike and Carleen. Any questions? Mike's got one.
This is really quick. Item 1680, I've been watching this for a year, and my curiosity got the better of me. What is CMI Guardian 2?
It's a security for our IT.
So it's like antivirus?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Mike, is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, Candy, we'll take a voice vote on this.
You gotta do that, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Out of practice here. Peterson,
Yes.
Wunsch,
Yes.
Van Campen,
Yes.
Velo,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Fashion,
Yes.
English.
Yes. Okay. We'll go to 6, which I love. I love this consent agenda. 6A through M is our consent agenda tonight, so I'll take a motion in a second. Derek and Carleen, any
Can we pull out
questions?
item B?
Item B.
Just have a quick question for,
Well, we both agree.
All right. So Martin, how do we do, Kenny, how do we deal with that first? Separate it?
You can.
All right, should we take everything else and then we'll come back to that? So somebody wants to give me a motion, a second, to do everything except B. All right, Derek and Mike. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, let's take B. 6B. Addendum to the Memorandum Law Enforcement Support Office Program, participating law enforcement agency. Derek?
I was just curious what equipment the village has received through this program in the past.
First of all, free is good,
I
right?
understand that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Totally agree. I'm just curious.
Love
on that.
free.
So tactical helmets,
Okay.
which typically range between $500 to $1,000. And also rifles that will eventually possibly be used for the honor guard. That's it. We're sent lists on a yearly basis. Most of it's irrelevant to hit and miss with the program, but it can certainly pay off at times. That's it.
Thank you.
All right, Mike, you got something? Yep.
Yeah, specifically on page 45, under section 4C, subsection 2, subsection 2, it's unclear to me that we actually, if we authorize this, that you couldn't go ahead and I'm not saying you would do this, but get an armored personnel carrier or something like that, and if the village board disagreed with that you would still have the authority to do that. I'm not saying you would, but I'm wondering, is there a policy that exists that says that you need approval from our village board for this equipment, or would you be open to developing that policy?
So a policy does exist. It's on our website. It's just off the top of my head, it's something like specialized vehicles. So our K-9 vehicle is under that. That would have to come under this, and that's under the accreditation guidelines. So yes, that would have to be vetted through you guys.
So any other equipment you get here that wouldn't be
It
like
depends. So,
standard?
like ammunition, we wouldn't come to you for the approval of what
Right.
kind of ammunition to use. The same with tactical helmets. But when it comes to military style vehicle, yeah, we would have to come to to adjust the policy to include
Okay.
that information. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, anybody else? All right, so I think we need a motion and a second to approve B. Derek? Second? Jenna? Okay. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, we go down to 7. Report of committees. 7A is the library board. The meeting minutes were in our packet, informational only. 7B is public safety committee. Number 1 or I is operating license for Seth Seifert. Committee recommendation to approve. Jenna, do you want to say this was before us before it came back to your committee?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, we had previously recommended denial for this operator's license. The Public Safety Committee, we had not been able to get in touch with Mr. Seifert. But after it came before the village board, he was able to attend that meeting, and we were able to get it back into committee and have Mr. Seifert come before us, where we discussed with him the incidences in question and go through our process. I wish Matt was here; he could help us kind of describe what we have to look for as a committee. You know, are the offenses that we're reviewing, were they substantially related to the license? And the other question is about rehabilitation, if they have done their due diligence. So, after our conversation with Mr. Seifert, we felt that that they had done their due diligence and rehabilitation, followed the requirements up to that point of their agreement with the courts, and we decided to approve the operator's license.
All right.
Or pass it on for approval, I guess is the better term.
All right, Jenna, do you want to make a motion, and we'll get a second, and see if there's any
So,
questions?
I'll make the motion to approve the operator's license for Seth Seifert.
All right, can we get a second from Derek? Okay, any questions for Jenna or the committee? Okay, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you, Jenna. C is the Ad hoc Public Transportation Committee, authorize $1,500 in available 2022 budget funds toward a proposed survey, which I think we actually have at our table in front of us. I don't know, Amanda, do you need to say anything? You want to say anything about it?
Yeah, there's a few things. First of all, someone pointed out that question number 7 seems to be missing off this. I think it got cut off accidentally when we were moving some things around. I believe it says something along the lines of how long would you be willing to wait for a ride? And yeah, that's at the top
Yeah.
right column. It says the answers are like 1 hour, 30 minutes, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, but the question itself disappeared. But we can fix that. That's just a formatting thing. One of the other things, so the committee spent a lot of time looking at what types of questions we wanted to ask and how they were phrased. We got a lot of input from Ben Lyman, who's with the Greater Madison Metropolitan Public something or other. I don't know what it stands for, but he was very helpful, and the last 4 questions on this survey are on their demographic questions, and they're required if we were ever to apply for federal funding or like grants and things like that. So we wanted to put those in there just to make sure that we're eligible if we need to be for funding. One thing we may change. I mean, we may like to change a couple of words here. I noticed after we approved this at our last meeting that we had a question number 6. Would you be willing to leave your car at a park and ride lot? And we have responses for yes and no. We might want to put like, don't own a car or a vehicle. Even changing car to vehicle, that might be a more appropriate option. So that would be something that I propose we look at and just vote as a board at this level to change that. Just, it's a very simple change, and it doesn't really materially change what the committee did. And for numbers 12 and 13, we would also, we don't have to, so I had talked to Martin, and he had put these answers in, prefer not to answer under those. That's not the way the committee approved it. We didn't have that under those, but it might be a good idea to answer that because it's it's pretty standard for these demographic questions. We don't have it under the age one. There are certain questions that people are less likely to respond to if they don't have that option to opt out, and we want as many responses as possible in the most complete surveys as possible. So we felt like maybe that would be something the board at this level should add to those two questions. And I guess
Amanda, when I looked at it, I wondered, do you think there should be something about cost? I mean, has your committee talked? Yeah.
Yeah, we did discuss it. We felt it was premature because this isn't necessarily the only time we would survey the community. We may do a bigger transportation study that would include more in-depth questions. This was just let's take the temperature of the community, see what kinds of things people would be willing to do and use and all that, and then there's a grant that we still may apply for a larger transportation study, and then we can talk about more specifics like price, because some of that may require, if we wanted to do, let's say, a reduced rate for seniors or for students, that might require some subsidy on our part, or maybe not. I mean,
right.
We don't know. It's too big of an issue. We felt that we'd just keep it really simple. Also, we wanted to keep it to one page.
Sure.
This is one page. It's really simple. We're going to have it at the senior center and the library and the village hall in a paper copy. And it's also going to be available online. We'll post it on the website, I'm assuming, and there'll be a QR code and a short link that go out with people's property tax letters. We'll have a little paragraph about it in there. The way the survey works, though, the $1,500 that we're asking for is because on the back side, you'd fold it over, and then we'd do a return postage paid by the village so that people didn't have to put a stamp on it to return it. That's where the price, that and the paper, making the paper copies, that's the cost. So we're asking for $1,500, but honestly, I don't think we'd hit $1,500. I think it's going to be a lot less because most people will do it online. So I think the cost is minimal, and it just helps us see where people are at.
So Amanda, I understand the 1,500, but can you just reiterate what changes you want us to sort of approve?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you want me to just make a motion on this?
If you want to,
The
sure,
change?
you may.
Yes.
Okay.
Just so everybody's clear. what
Sure,
the
absolutely.
changes
So my motion would be to add the responses prefer not to answer to questions 12 and 13, which is already, we have it on there as a draft. Yeah, that was already there in the version we approved. So
You could do a motion to approve as presented on this sheet of paper. if you
except
want.
including question 7.
Including the language for question 7.
Right.
And did you want to
And-
change car to vehicle?
Exactly. Number 6, changing the word car to vehicle and adding the response, I don't have a vehicle, or don't own a vehicle. Don't
Second.
have one, I guess, don't have access or whatever.
Second.
All right, Jen looks like she's got a question.
I just,
Comment.
for the prefer not to answer, were you looking at adding that to 11 to the age question, or only 12 and 13? I feel like if we're gonna add it to the demographic questions, we should add to all.
Well, so the age tends to be not a problem for most people. They don't have a problem checking a box for their age. So that, according to Ben Lyman, who does these with many communities, we can add it. I'm okay with adding it if you think we should, but it's not necessary. My worry is that if we keep adding responses, it's gonna kick us off the page, and then we have to reduce the font, and then it's hard for people to read, and I want people to fill these out. So if we go if we add too much, then it becomes a space issue. So that was why I was thinking we wouldn't, but I'm open to, if you guys feel really strongly one way or the other, we can add it.
Jenna, what do you think? You want it?
I guess my inclination is that to add it, if we're gonna add it, we should add it to all 3, just give people that option. But I understand your concerns, and I'm wondering, if there's other ways that we can, change, make them, make the margins a little smaller, or anything like that that might.
Move the text closer to the bullet.
Yeah, okay. Okay, well, so let's add that to my motion. Are you okay with that, Phil?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other
And can you,
comments?
For
Yep.
my record, can you just let me know what the question to number 7 is, just so, because I'm keeping a copy.
Yes. I have to pull up the so because we have an online version, it's in the online version. I'll just pull it up here. Where is it? How do I get there? Oh, look. All right.
So I pulled it up here, Amanda.
You pull it up?
Yep.
Thank you.
So
You're
it's,
faster than me.
how long would you be willing to wait for a public transit ride?
For a public transit ride.
Yeah.
Okay. All
So
right.
I'm gonna send this around just so everybody can see the changes.
All right, ready to vote? Okay. We got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Carleen, backed up. Whoop.
When are you planning to do this? When?
Yeah, time frame.
So good question. The paragraph that we are letting people know about the survey will go out with property taxes in the letters, and we're gonna get the survey up online around the same time. We could put it on the website, and we want the survey to be filled out by January 13th, end of day kind of thing. So.
All right.
That's,
No, I just.
does that make
I
sense?
just-
So,
yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure, I can't give you like a concrete time when it'll open just yet, but as soon as it's open, we can post it on the website, and then people will see it.
All right, Carleen, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
All right, we got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, there you go. It's okay. All right.
I must have asked you before, no, you hadn't.
Oh, it's okay.
All right, we'll go to D, which is Plan Commission items. I is, or 1 is extraterritorial certified survey map submitted by Norma J. Jenkins Survivor Trust for Land Division near 5400 Netherwood Road in the town of Oregon. Commission recommendation was to, motion to approve as presented. Derek, and I'll give it to Phil this time. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. 2, another one, an extraterritorial certified survey map submitted by Schultz Survivors Trust for a land division near 4549 County Highway A in the town of Oregon. Same recommendation from the commission is to approve as presented. All right, Amanda and Derek, any discussion? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. D3 is conditional use permit, an agreement for Ziggy's Barbecue located at 135 North Main Street to allow outdoor amplified music. They did come before the Plan Commission. Recommendation is to approve as presented. Mike, motion? Okay. And Derek? All right, any discussion on this?
Looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, moving along. 8 is unfinished business. Items are for discussion, possible action. 8 is my nomination of Mary Norwell and Marlia Groves to the Ad hoc Public Art Committee. These were original members who applied, the first batch, so I'm putting forward these two. Jenna?
I would make a motion to approve. the
Okay,
appointment.
second. All right, we'll give it to Carleen. All right, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? B, Dan sent Martin and I an email. He withdrew his application
Oh.
to be on the Ad hoc Public Transportation Committee this afternoon. So won't take any action on that. And then 8C is 249, 267. Yeah. Go ahead, Carleen, what's the question?
It's actually not a question, and,
Yeah.
but because we're talking about committees, there was a statement that so we just met as a DI committee
Yeah.
last week.
Yeah.
And we have a suggested statement or a suggested policy that will be in the next board meeting, but I just want to let folks know about places to post openings and things
Okay.
like that. So
Okay.
there is a formal recommendation from our discussion.
All right, so more information at
Yes.
next meeting. Good, thank you. All right, so C, 249, 267 North Main Street, future reuse. Martin?
All right, I'm
Or-
gonna start
or-
us
or-
off,
or
and
Lise,
then I'll
or
have
tag
Martin
team.
Fill in here,
Who's-
so.
Who's the brave one?
I'll step up to that first.
All right.
So, we've been on a journey here on this site. I think maybe between Jennifer, Jenny, and I spent many hours staring at the map of this neighborhood and trying to figure out, when we were back at the library site, how can we make this work? Then ultimately our decision to move the library, and then kind of what are our next steps. It's been, I think there's been a lot of really important discussions and ideas about this site over the last several years, and I think we're kind of getting to a point where we have a lot of information and we have a lot of interest in the site. It's really exciting to see. There are so many community groups, nonprofits, community organizations, developers that have contacted the board, have contacted myself, and asked, when will we have an opportunity to share our ideas about the site. So I think it's really important that the board think about how we move forward in a strategic way, because this is a really strategic site, great access to downtown in an established neighborhood, and we've got one opportunity to really do this right. So as we presented last time, we did update our community input report in the appendix. So thank you, Carlene and Randy and others that have sent me some of those emails and letters that weren't forwarded the first time around. So those have all been included. Even given that additional information, it's still obviously fairly mixed opinions about what the future of the site could look like. But even with those varied opinions, I think there are some common goals that we can pull out, and obviously different things rose to the top in the survey. Those range from providing public park and open space, environmental preservation, managing the stormwater issues on the site, and the potential of providing low to moderate density residential that fits in with the scale, the character of the neighborhood. So given all of this information that we collected over the summer, Martin and I are coming full circle back to our proposal that we presented back at the April 18th Village Board meeting, based on the long-term planning that the village has had for this area, based on the information we received this summer, based on the use ideas that are already being generated on the site, the strategic location, the varied vision that the community has, and the financial considerations that the board is responsible for taking into account. We recommend that the board proceed with having me put together an RFP, request for proposals, from the community at large. Could be open to developers, community groups, nonprofits, to propose how they would help us meet the goals that the community has identified for the site, and be able to really compare apples to apples. Here's a process, here's a deadline, here's a price a fair market value that we've determined through an appraisal. So that's step one, is commissioning a property appraisal, determine a fair market value. The last time this was done is October of 2003. So that was that 600 some odd thousand number that was in the first appraisal. We have gotten a couple estimates for appraisal that range from about $2,000 to $3,000 on a site this size, and given that it's vacant land, an appraisal is a little bit more difficult to do than just, here's my house and very distinct building, but we would do an appraisal with the understanding that, very high density housing is not a possibility here, and obviously that would have more value than something that would have more of a low to moderate density. So setting realistic expectations about what we feel would be appropriate and acceptable to the community in this area. So starting with an appraisal, writing the RFP. The RFP would state that at least some portion of the property would remain as a public park. The RFP would also state that proposed redevelopment projects would be viewed more favorably if healthy mature trees identified in the tree study would be preserved to the extent practical. Ensure the property's stormwater management issues are addressed. Ensure that any proposed development is focused on low to moderate density housing consistent with the use, scale, design, and character of the neighborhood. Encourage developers to consider senior and/or affordable housing in their proposals. And then also encourage proposals that do not require public financial incentives or which allow the village to retain a portion of increment generated, since this isn't a TIF district. But as we've seen with other TIF proposals, we do have the option to retain some of that increment created if there is development happening to help fund debt service and other projects in TID 5. So that is our request, that the board allow us to proceed with commissioning an appraisal, which we'd have to bring back and have to get a formal quote, and then have that information feed into putting together an RFP and then establish a timeline for that to be published, open to the community to respond to, and then have a review process that allows us to, again, kind of compare apples to apples and make sure that not just on finances, but also on proposed use and alignment with the goals the community's identified. Really take an opportunity to see if there are one or multiple uses that really help meet everybody's goals here. So I think in the end, hopefully we can find something that maybe everyone's a little bit disappointed, but that means that we found a good compromise and is a good fit for our community beyond just the neighborhood itself, but is a good move for the village. We have very few village owned parcels, and especially with this location, I think it's really important that we are thoughtful about next steps.
All right.
That's my bit.
Okay. We want to see, get something on the table, and then we can have discussion. So basically, what we're doing is it'd be a motion to direct Elise to proceed with requesting an appraisal and begin developing a request for proposal document to be approved by the village board at a future meeting.
What is it?
Okay, so you're making,
I'll do it.
okay, and I'll second the motion. All right, discussion. Yeah, Garland, go ahead.
So I have a question about the RFP itself, because we know that there is a lot of community interest, and I don't know who the developers are, who they are. Is there a possibility in that to have a collaborative project with some of the proposals that have already been brought forward and of development?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, so a couple of things. There are multiple parcels as part of this property. There are 3 parcels, but parcel lines can be redrawn all the time. We do CSMs all the time,
Because it's
so
all the same.
right. They're somewhat arbitrary. As long as they have access to a road, then they can be, subdivided. We could certainly put that in an RFP that, what's your name, applicant or applicants, which organizations or companies are represented here. We could also add an option that, perhaps if you as the applicant don't feel that your proposal would need all of the property, that could be specified too, that here's, I would imagine we'd have, please submit some kind of concept site plan and identify, the land area that you are requesting to essentially purchase and develop.
Okay. Yeah, Jenna?
So I definitely like the idea of getting an appraisal on the property, so we understand how much it is worth, because I feel like we don't really haven't captured that information yet. I also like the idea of doing the request for proposal. My only concern is that I would like to remove the part that talks about focusing on housing, because when we think about just the presentations tonight, that would exclude the Historical Society, that would exclude the sculpture park, and I think it's important that we look at all of the opportunities for this parcel together. And so we're really looking at what the imaginations of folks who are interested in this parcel have. So that would be my inclination, is to do the RFP, but remove the focus on housing so that we can really have all the interested parties, all the community groups coming and sharing what their vision is for this, and what they would be willing to develop on that property.
I think maybe one way to reword that sentence in 6 would say, any proposed development that would include residential should be consistent with the uses, scale, character of the neighborhood. So it wouldn't have to be a requirement, but if you are proposing residential, this is what should be kind of your key goals in that.
Yeah, I think that, any sort of building that would be proposed should definitely fit with the neighborhood, so I'd like to see that change.
Okay.
Good point.
Other? Anybody else? Mike?
Yeah, I would say actually, whether it ends up residential, commercial, or historical society or whatever, the building needs to conform to the neighborhood.
Okay.
So I'm not sure that
Yeah.
ties just to residential.
Right, yeah.
Okay, anybody else? Phil?
I just want to be clear, we're only changing the wording in number 6, which I don't object to, but is that the only change we have?
That was my proposal, that was my proposal.
I proposed including some language about collaborative projects or ways that
Yeah,
could be.
and just to clarify too, I would actually bring the RFP language to the board, so when we have some more specific,
Great.
templates, but I'm taking notes, and we'll make sure that those ideas get incorporated into
Good with that.
more finely tuned rewording.
Amanda, is that a hand?
Yeah, just was question then, what kind of time frame, like how long are RFP requests open for, and like when would that start roughly?
Yeah. It can vary. I mean, we've seen one example from the city of Verona, their redevelopment site that's right on Verona Avenue, kind of on the west side of their main intersection. They did a RFP for that site, I think right before COVID, and I think it was, that got messed up, but the original intent of the timeline was, I think, maybe, I think we're in like a 4 to 6 month process of, here's all the information, here are our goals, submit kind of your proposal and concept, and there might have been a couple of rounds of review to kind of whittle down the board's or the council's top choices. So it can kind of range, but it would probably be in that general time frame. I would say probably 4 to 6 months. Obviously, we have some other factors at play here. We have our comp plan getting updated next year, our park plan getting updated next year too. So it might be that we could have the potential reuse of this site align with those plans. So if the board identifies that, this is the site and it's going to have this mix of uses, we can incorporate that and don't have to do a separate, comp plan amendment or park plan amendment if that's kind of the direction we know we're heading. So that would be the advantage of trying to maybe kind of get this done in the first quarter or half of next year, so we can make sure that's incorporated into those plans before they're adopted.
Okay. And I
Yeah,
guess,
go
sorry, one more. I was
Yeah.
just gonna say, my concern was just that obviously the sculpture garden has a very, well thought out plan, and all, they're very organized and they have all this in place, whereas like the Historical Society and the other organization, which I've forgotten the name of, I apologize, but if they want to submit a request for proposal, they need time to be able to get together everything to submit that, because I want this to be more inclusive. I'm curious what that would entail, and I want to see more, and I want to be able to compare apples to apples. So I like the idea of the request for proposal and just have everybody go through the process.
Yeah. Again, we do have some templates from other communities we can pull from. I wouldn't expect that people would come with a full-fledged, engineered, professionally designed site plan, but some amount of a concept plan, so we would know this would actually work, this is actually feasible on the site. They would still have to, if there is development of any type, it would have to go through, even a park would go through planning commission and all of their site plan review and stormwater management plans and everything. So we'd have to kind of identify what are the basic components of your RFP that we need to make sure that things would actually, again, fit and work on the site, but then would be taken further if that proposal is selected through the full design review process.
All right, we good? Mike?
Yeah, regarding the mature trees, would you be open to including something along the lines of, we would also preference, proposals that allow public access to those trees? So, I mean, I assume people not only want the trees there, but given the fact they're there, they probably want to actually be able to see them other than from a distance, so.
I could take a whack at it, including that when we kind of reword this list a little bit.
Yep, okay.
Okay.
All right, so we do have a motion and a second. I think we're done discussing. All right, let's take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Very good. 8D, we're on to. Review and potentially accept the low bid from First Supply in the amount of $354,465.46 to purchase pipes, fittings. And here's, Jeff is still making his presence known.
Yeah.
Appearances for the 2023 State and Washington Street roadway construction and utility replacement project, and the Janesville Street water main replacement and sewer repair project. Lauren, you want to say anything on this, or not? You don't have to. It's up to you.
I don't know if this is a him, but I think it's actually fairly straightforward. I'm happy to answer any questions, but it's pretty well spelled out in the memo. I know you guys have seen it before.
Okay. All right, motion?
Move to approve.
All right, Phil and Jenna. Okay, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And then E is 2023 budget process updates, including review of the employee compensation plan implementation, review street light expenditure, recovery use charge study, and draft municipal vehicle registration fee, wheel tax ordinance. Martin, is that you?
I was gonna say, could we have like 1 or 2 minutes so I can get hooked into the matrix here?
Yeah.
We
Should
do
we
a
take,
scene change
should we
quick?
should we take a 5-minute break, quick? All right. Yeah. You ready, Dan?
Can you
All
hear me?
right.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can. All right, so we are on 8E, which is the 2023 budget process updates. And Martin, the floor is yours.
All right.
3 minutes.
3 minutes. Yes.
Starting
We're
with
keeping
fire.
track tonight.
All right.
Gotta do it twice.
I don't really have too much. It's more of just reconfirming kind of what we talked about at the last meeting, and then just a couple of loose ends to clear up. So next Monday will be the public hearing and the approval of the budget. And there we are. We're running to the finish line. I just do that to get Candy to laugh. So the couple things that we talked about at the last meeting were the wheel tax and streetlight user fee. And there was direction from the board to include revenues from those two sources in the budget. So we have done just that. We set the wheel tax at $40, which would generate about $340,000 in revenue. And then the streetlight fee would come in to place halfway through the year, which would generate $70,000, and then $140,000 for a full year. So in the packet, there is the potential ordinance for imposing the wheel tax, and then there is also a proposal from Ellers, which would set a user fee for the streetlights, a justified user fee for the streetlights. That's in there, assuming that nothing has changed from the last meeting. I would have the board consider this and potentially approve it in conjunction with the 2023 budget at the next meeting.
Okay.
Just a couple other things that popped up along the way. So one of the things that has been a goal of ours has been to have a recreation reservation program. So I think everybody's familiar that the school district has been doing our reservations for our public facilities, at least in recent history. And so now that we've brought on Leanne in the community services coordinator position, her first big project was to look at this. And so she's put forward a really good proposal. She spent some time researching it and talked to other communities, and she's going to be talking about it with the park board tomorrow. So we've put in the budget expenditures of $8,500 to implement this program, and then she also did a very good job of projecting revenue that could potentially be made off of reservations using past history of reservations. And so we think that conservatively we would bring in enough revenue to offset the cost of that program. So we included those both in there, and I think Leanne is planning on coming to next week's meeting to talk a little bit about that to the board. And then just some kind of residual funds. So with the wheel tax and streetlight user fee, there was kind of some leftover money after the compensation plan, so we were able to remove the $60,000 from the post office rent. So we still have about $10,500 of that still in there, and of course that's going to go away mid-year 2024. So it's good that we're going that way, and $10,000 is pretty manageable. And then there's just a very small contingency that we were able to set aside, almost $2,000. So the big thing I want to talk about is the employee compensation plan. So Patrick Glenn from Carlson Detman was here, I think it was at the last meeting, a meeting in October. And he kind of presented on sort of broad strokes related to what they saw in the compensation study. And I think kind of all boils down to sort of one key thing, which was that on average, employee wages were about 6% below the market of what they were seeing. And so my plan here is to talk a little bit more specifically about what the plan actually looks like and how, and just to reiterate how they came to those conclusions and then what our proposal is for wages in the 2023 budget. So I think most people are familiar with something like this. It's a wage scale. People have grades. Their positions are graded on the left side here, and then there's a range that they're given for their position. The 100% mark is, the yellow column there is considered sort of the market rate of that grade. And so this compensation plan is entirely based on longevity. And so you can kind of see in this right-hand table here that years of experience equates to steps in the compensation plan. And so that's really the only factor right now that we can reasonably use in our compensation plan. And I'll talk a little bit more about what we might want to go to in the future. But so that's what the skeleton, the bones of the compensation plan looks like and what Carlson Detman has handed over to us. Generally, you would imagine that if you were hired, you'd start down here at step 1, and then with each year of experience, you would progress each step up the scale. So Patrick talked a little bit about this, but I wanted to just talk a little bit more in detail about it. So the way that they set wages or come up with the wages is they gathered a bunch of information from us. So they took our job descriptions. They had us do something called job description questionnaires, which the collective groan down the department heads is, that was a lot of work. There was a number of questions that they asked and a lot of information that we had to provide about each village position. And then they did a couple of small interviews as well. But basically what they've done with that information is they put all of our positions into grades, and that equate to this 1 through 25 on the left side. And you can see later on where all the positions fell into. But the way that they put positions in those grades is based on these factors right here. So starting from the bottom, formal preparation and experience, what level of education or experience do you need to be able to do the position? What is the work environment of the position, potential for accidents, hazards, physical requirements? What kind of interactions and communications is the position having? What could be the outcomes or effects of those communications? And then that kind of ties into decision making as well, as far as what kind of discretionary decision making do they have, and what kind of impact could come from judgments that are made. Certainly, take a position like Lisa's position, if she makes a very serious mistake, it could be quite consequential for the entire organization. And then thinking challenges and problem solving. Are you following a standard operating procedure in what you're doing, or are you coming up with, or do you have work that is unique and that you need to think through and problem solve through? And so those are all the things that they take into consideration when they graded each position. And then the second part of that, so that's kind of the qualitative part of it, and then the quantitative part is setting the range of the wage scale. And so what Carlson Detman does is they look at, they pull in a lot of different sources of market data, and so they looked at the public sector, so looking at some of our comparables, primarily in Dane County, but also looking at a couple of communities outside just to kind of get a sense of where other folks are at in terms of compensation. And then they also use a lot of private sector data that's listed here. I have, my wife Michelle is actually a compensation analyst, and she's been casually following this process along out of curiosity, and she made a comment to me that particularly this pay factors in Willis Towers Watson, they're kind of like the premium compensation data source that a lot of people use in the private sector. And so that made me kind of feel good about that. So they are using very reputable data sources. And so that's what they use to come up with the scale. And so as we move forward, and this is what I was talking about before, and we've talked about it previously in the past, and I know it's something that we've kind of talked about as a goal to work towards. But really right now, what we have is the single rate model, which is we come up with a wage for a position. Maybe we call some of our peers to see where people are at, base it on some of the existing positions we have, and then we just give a rate to somebody who we hire. This plan will go to a step-based model, which would be based on longevity, so following up the scale. But in the future, we may want to go to performance-based model, or a combination of longevity and performance-based. So one way I've seen it done is, that first half of the scale up to, this yellow column is based on longevity. And then when you get to the yellow, the only way you can move up beyond that is with a good performance review. So those might be things that we want to consider in the future. So this is where you can see all of our positions graded into that 1 through 25, and then the scale that is set. And so my plan would be for adopting this would be, assuming we adopt the budget, then also have something that would adopt this scale as well, and then also as a supplement all the individual positions and what step they would be at in the scale, and we would do that annually. So the proposal in the budget, so with the wheel tax and the streetlight charge, that obviously generated a lot of revenue that we can use towards this. We also already had the 3% increase across the board in the draft budget before that. And so we really came up with a scenario based on 3 factors. So the first one is market competitiveness. So if you remember, Patrick presented this chart to us. The black line is where we currently are, and then the gray line is sort of the median market, and then the blue and green are sort of that higher tiers of competitiveness, with the green, the 75th percentile. Basically, you're paying 75% more than other comparable communities and organizations, and 25% less than other communities and comparable organizations. So one of the things that he had said in the presentation is, because the market is moving so rapidly, it's very likely that that gray line is probably going to become that blue line within 6 months. And so the proposal that I'm putting forward is to set the scale at the 75th percentile, which would be very competitive. And then we'll likely probably see movement in the market over the next 6 months, which will probably put us maybe just above the median market. So this kind of puts us reaching a little higher now, but and staying a little bit ahead of the game. The second factor is trying to recognize some longevity. So if we wanted to place everybody on the scale based on all of their years of experience, we couldn't afford it. It would be over $1 million. It would just be too much at this time. We just don't have enough financial resources. And it might kind of put things into sort of a tough position if we wanted to go to a performance-based model in the future, where everybody would already be at the top of the scale, and then the performance piece of it would kind of not be useful at that point from a compensation standpoint. And so in talking with Carlson Detman, one thing that they recommended was recognize some longevity, and what they suggested was putting people at step 3 if they had at least 5 years of employment with the village. And so there are some positions that are higher on the scale already because their wage was already up towards that range of the scale. And so you do have people in this proposal that are up at step 8, step 9, step 10, because their wage was already that close to it. And then there are some people that will be pushed up to this step 3 because they have that 5 years of employment. And then everybody else is just getting onto that scale at step 1. So there's kind of 3 tiers of people that we're just trying to get people onto the scale. And then the third piece of it is just an across-the-board cost of living. So, and then addressing inflation that's occurring. So, my recommendation is a minimum of a 4% increase. So, even those employees who are at kind of higher in the scale, and they may not see really any movement from what were the first two factors, they'll at least get a 4% increase, so that everybody is kind of moving up together in that regard. So in those items in combination, the scenario is about $470,000 in salaries and an additional $77,000 in fringe costs, and that's spread across not just the general fund, but also utilities and some of the other minor funds that we have. It's kind of all over the range, the spectrum here of how people are impacted. You know, there's a group that's getting that minimum 4%, but there's also a handful that are getting some pretty larger increases because they are quite substantially behind the market from what we're seeing in the study. I would say the vast majority, most employees would see about a 5 to 6% increase under this scenario, which is kind of in line with what we saw in this right here. If they're telling us that on average we're 6% below the market, then this scenario pulls us up for a number of employees. Another thing that it does, and I know this has been an area of concern for some department heads, but some of our casual hourly positions, where they may only work a couple times a month, they may only work a couple hours a year, or certain times of the year, they may only work a couple hours in a year. This would get them all up to over $15 an hour. So all those casual positions got graded at grade 1. And so you can see step 1, grade 1, $15.79. So I know that was a point of emphasis among some of the department heads because these positions are seeing a lot of pressure for competition from restaurants and Quick Trip and all these other different hourly positions. And so we're seeing a little bit of turnover in those positions. And I think this will help us compete better with those other organizations that are out there starting to get their positions above $15 an hour. In this scenario, the senior center certainly had the largest percentage increases. There are like a 20%, 10%, 15% increases. Now, a lot of these positions don't, the amount of money that they make to begin with isn't terribly substantial, so 20% increase might be going from $20,000 to $30,000 a year, that sort of thing. But certainly the case managers, the adult day program workers, the nutrition workers, these are all positions that they have very important work and they need extensive training and a very good skill set to perform well, and they saw some nice increases that I think are overdue. The library had the greatest dollar amount increase. I think part of that is because they just have a large number of employees compared to some of the other departments. Some of the second line supervisors saw some particularly large dollar and percentage increases. Assistant positions, which is I think that third level, they also experienced a pretty high percentage increase. But again, these are part-time positions. Even with a big percentage increase, they may only be making $20,000 to $25,000 a year. Same thing with the pages. They may make up to $5,000 or $10,000 a year if they work a lot. But even if they're getting some of these higher percentage increases, it doesn't equate to a terrible large amount of money. Public Works employees were within that 5 to 6% range predominantly. There was a couple larger ones, particularly in that second and third line supervision level, the superintendents, chief operators. So again, kind of consistent with the library and that sort of second level of supervision. Police department employees were all within the 5 to 6% range. Crossing guards got the boost about $15 an hour. And then Village Hall employees were sort of all over the place. Some of us were in the 5 to 6% range, and then there was a couple that saw a little bit larger increases. So that is the employee compensation plan and the scenario that we built into the plan.
Well, you certainly went over 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Questions for? Okay.
And then I'll just cover just a couple budget-wide things. So we did get the final assessed value for the village, which was a little bit higher than we projected, which from a tax rate perspective is usually a good thing. So all of the calculations in the budget document that you have are, I guess, true and correct as far as what we'll bring into the budget meeting next week, the approval meeting next week. There's one thing I wanted to highlight, and that is, so our property tax levy, the amount of dollars that we're levying is going up 10.8%. But the actual tax rate, so the rate at which we're taxing property, is actually going down 1.65%. So if your property value stayed relatively the same, or maybe went up just a little bit, you may actually see a decrease in the village portion of taxes, or relatively flat. Now, if your value went up, obviously you're going to be taxed more because you have more value, and so you may see, even though the tax rate went down 1.65%, you may see a larger increase in the village portion of taxes, just because your property is more valuable now. So I think that's an important thing to note. The levy's going up 10.8%. Amount of dollars we're bringing in is 10.8% more. The actual rate at which people are going to be taxed is going down 1.65%. And that's all I have. So I guess if there's no inclination of any changes at this point, then we'll take this into next week's meeting for approval. If there is any desire to make any changes, I would prefer to have that now, because it's really hard to do that in the approval meeting when you're making adjustments on the fly. So I would like to make sure that we're on mostly steady ground going into that last meeting.
Doesn't look like it.
All right.
All right.
Nice job.
Yep. All right, we'll go to 9.
Randy.
Oh, Mike's got one? Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I appreciate the work you put in on this, particularly your voluminous writings, which I always find illuminating and learn stuff from. The one in particular that I wanted to call out for anyone who hasn't really dug into it is on page 451 and 452 are the cost of TID calculations, because I know a number of staff have at times gone, why are you so opposed to TIDs? And the math in there is, this year we paid for the TIDs in Oregon $166.55 per taxpayer or per property to fund the TIDs. Next year it's going to be $246 roughly. That doesn't include the money we pay for other communities' TIDs. It doesn't include the money that the TIDs haven't paid back to us yet, that we're extending money for borrowing into the TIDs. It's a big chunk of money. The community this year spent a good deal of time arguing over whether or not 249 North Main Street should be a sculpture garden or we should sell it to get our money back. That amounts to about $10 a year per property on what we're paying for that in Oregon. So the amount we're spending on TIDs is 25 times that amount. That's probably double the entire cost of what we're putting into J.C. Park and its effect on our taxes. So just want you to know TIDs aren't free.
Okay. All right, anybody else? All right, let's go to 9 then, new business. Items are for discussion, possible action. 9A is resolution number 2239, urging legislature and governor to fix broken system of funding critical local services. Carlene, this is yours?
This is mine.
Yeah,
This is
go ahead.
ours.
Go
This
ahead,
is
you want
not
to say
mine.
something?
Yes, I absolutely
Well, you
do.
initiated it, okay?
Well, first of all, I want to thank Martin or whoever put the exact dollar figures in there. This is about the fact that our state government gets a lot of revenue from us in our taxes, and not enough of it comes back to us, and we now have a surplus. So, can I read this? All right, so, urging the legislature and governor fix the broken system of funding critical local services. Whereas Wisconsin's system for funding vital local services like police, fire protection, EMS, well-maintained streets, parks, senior centers, and libraries is broken, unsustainable, and needs to be reformed. And whereas sales tax and income tax revenues have tripled in the last 30 years, but the share of the taxes going to support local services has gone down. And whereas the Wisconsin State Legislature has restricted the property tax levy limit over the last 2 decades at a level that does not allow local municipalities to raise the funds necessary to provide services to their residents. And I would just add in parentheses, they did the same thing to public schools. And whereas over the last 20 years, state aid for local services has steadily declined in real dollars, while inflation has caused average prices to increase by 51%. The funding level for county and municipal aid in 2003 was $938,529,507. Today, it is $753,032,613. And whereas county and municipal aid payments to the Village of Oregon has dropped from $300,455 in 2003 to $165,887 in 2022. And whereas the steady decline in the state's contribution to the cost of critical local services has forced communities to rely more heavily on property taxes to maintain police, fire, EMS, streets, parks, senior centers, and library service levels. And whereas the over-reliance on property taxes to pay for critical local services must end. And whereas the state of Wisconsin currently has an unprecedented revenue surplus of more than $4 billion, with a B, billion dollars, at a time when municipal governments are being forced to use unsustainable methods to balance their budgets, such as using their fund balance, postponing needed repairs, and delaying hiring for essential positions. And whereas to compete globally, Wisconsin needs to develop and maintain quality communities that can attract and retain talent and enterprise and spur job creation. And whereas for local communities to flourish and the state's economy to grow, state and local leaders must work collaboratively. And whereas local governments need reliable, growing, sustainable, and diverse sources of revenue to continue to deliver police, fire protection, ambulance services, safe streets, parks, senior centers, and libraries now and into the future. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Village of Oregon urges the legislature and the governor to work collaboratively with the League of Municipalities, the Wisconsin Counties Association, the Wisconsin Towns Association, and other local government leaders and business leaders to create a better way of funding local governments that include revenue options other than property taxes, increasing shared revenues, revising the property tax levy limit, and utilizing the current state revenue surplus to continue delivering police, fire, EMS, streets, parks, senior centers, libraries, and other critical local services. And be it therefore resolved that the village clerk is hereby directed to send a copy of the adopted resolution of Oregon's legislative to Oregon's legislative delegation, the governor, and the League of Wisconsin Municipalities.
And with that, why don't you make a motion, Carlene?
I move that we vote unanimously to pass this and sign
All right.
it in blood.
Mike? I think I heard Mike second.
Yeah.
All right.
They didn't tell me about that one already.
Yeah. All right, any discussion? Any discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Good
Now
job.
we hand it to Jenna to take to the state.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Almost.
All right.
Soon.
So we're on 9B, which is review Vanderwall and Associates proposal for the 2023 comprehensive plan and 5-year park plan updates. Elise, have we seen this before, or am I just
You've
thinking
probably
I
seen
saw
it at
at Plan Commission? Okay.
Yep, so similar memo.
Okay.
Just moved a couple things around. So as I've mentioned a few times, and as you saw in our CIP, we are due for both our 10-year update to our comprehensive plan and our 5-year update to our CORP, or comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. So those align nicely to both get updated in 2023. We've historically used Vanderwall and Associates, our planning consultants, to do these plans, and the fact that we're doing them together provides some opportunities for cost savings, for opportunities to have a combined survey, combined workshops. Then information from those activities can all feed back into the updated reports. During their October meetings, we presented kind of a tiered approach, or sort of a bronze, silver, and gold option for both plans to the Park Board and the Planning Commission. And both the Park Board and the Planning Commission expressed their support for the standard update, which is sort of the middle of the road option for both plans. So I've highlighted kind of what's included in both of those below. Martin and I have included in the CIP the higher amounts for kind of the high end of the estimates that we were given from Vanderwall earlier this year. So if we decide to go with the less expensive option, that would just equate to less borrowing for those once the time comes. But just to kind of walk you through the plans, both of them kind of have a basic update, which is just fulfilling all of the requirements that the state has for these plans. The standard option is sort of all of the required elements of the plan, in addition to a multitude of public participation opportunities. And then the advanced option is all of those options below, in addition to things like, for the comp plan, more public participation opportunities, an economic opportunity analysis and graphic, an alternative growth scenario planning analysis, mapping, and a public workshop. For the park plan, the advanced option would include a conceptual park site design, vision graphic, and interactive park and trail map. A couple of notes just on the advanced options. I think some of those elements would be interesting and important. I think there are also things that could be added later as a separate study if it's something that through the planning process we really chose that we wanted to dive into, or maybe do a more of a neighborhood or small area plan on the Market Street corridor or something, for example. That could also be done at a later time. For the park plan, we do have specific kind of park designs later in our CIP. So the West Side Park, we've talked about, I think there's $4 million set aside in 2024 for that plan. So, we don't necessarily have to do a park site design as part of the park plan, but that can be done later. And there might be other parks too that we identify that we really want to kind of do more planning on. We also have more staff resources right now. So Leanne in the back, who will formally introduce herself to the board at the next meeting when she does her presentation. We have more horsepower now to do some things like an interactive trail map in-house, and so I don't think it's necessary that we really have Vanderwall do this from the get-go, but if it's something that we find we need help with, or they maybe help create an interactive GIS system later on, that's something we could look at adding on in the future. But the general timeline for these would be getting started sometime next month, kind of just getting the scope identified and a schedule, and then really going throughout the whole year with the goal of having these plans adopted by December of 2023, so they can be up and rolling by January of 24. So happy to take any questions, and our recommendation is just to move forward with the standard options as recommended by the Park and Planning Commission.
Okay. All right. Does anyone want to make a motion?
A question first.
All right.
I'm assuming the standard plans have been built into the budget. That is my motion.
Yep.
That way.
All right. So
to approve standard plans.
okay, we need a second. All right. I saw Amanda's hand. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
9C, future agenda items. This item gives board members the opportunity to place items and new business on our future agenda for discussion. Anybody have anything? I see Derek, yes, sir?
I got a few things.
Okay.
I guess first I'd like to see the presentation by Green Pastures Living by Ann Michaels. I don't know if she'd be ready for that next week, or if Martin, you can work with them whenever they're ready to get that presentation going. I know we put out requests for proposals, but I find it intriguing, so I guess I'd like to hear that. The next two items kind of tie together. We had a busy weekend a few weekends ago with our emergency services, and I guess I'd like to see put into the public record any relevant information from both the house explosion and the officer-involved shooting on, I believe it was October 29th, wasn't it? Or
It was
it was the weekend before Halloween.
Sunday, October 23rd.
Thank you. And again, I'm not looking for this next week, but just for any relevant information for the public. There was a few people that reached out that had concerns about notification. And again, I'd just like to see something for the public record on that. They were relatively big events within the community, and I think they should at least be noted within the public record.
All right. Carleen.
Just to follow up on that, the DEI committee did meet this last week, and that was one of the things that we discussed, and we actually drafted a suggested statement from the village concerning that, and I don't know, we drafted and we wordsmithed it. We post for committee and board openings, and one other thing that I'm not remembering off the top of my head.
Okay. Yeah. Derek?
I guess just to kind of go along, some just follow-up thoughts on this. I would actually like to delay whatever reports from both Chief Pagenkopf and Chief Linsmeyer, whatever they come to the board with, by at least a few months, to just give, I'm sure there's investigations ongoing on both incidents, so I'd like to give some time for the relevant information to all be at hand before it kind of comes up at a board meeting.
So if I
Chief.
may,
Yep.
for the house explosion, we did share on our Facebook, and I'd be happy to share the link with the village board through Candy. The fire chief actually did about a 30-minute press conference, which gave a lot of detail in regards to it, and what I would strongly suggest is watching that. It's very informative, and they asked me a few questions too that I thought were excellent questions, and again, I'll share that with Candy to share with the board. As far as the officer-involved shooting, I don't think in a few months I'll still be able to release any further information. It's not our investigation. The Wisconsin Department of Justice has released several statements now, an initial one and then a secondary one. Those statements can be found on the Wisconsin Department of Justice website. You go to their main website, you just click on press releases, you'll scroll down and you see that in there. Per state statute, it's required in those sort of circumstances that an independent investigation be done. Me as a police chief of an agency that was not involved in the officer-involved shooting, was not one of our officers who shot. B, we're not the primary investigating agency. I feel it would be inappropriate to give a statement because I don't have all of the details, and I do not want to interfere with their investigation. Those are very complex investigations. Lastly, I'm fully aware that there's interest in me providing a release to the public, and because of that barrier that exists with the independent investigation, we want to be very respectful of that. That's where all of the answers will come out, and that's going to take quite some time. There's a lot of work to be done, but What I did and what my staff did was we made personal contact with individuals that live on Oregon Parks Avenue. We made personal contact with the individuals living on Eagle Drive. Anyone who wanted to talk to us, and certainly there were people that had questions, concerns, and we wanted to do our best to make them feel safe moving forward. But I also went to the Methodist Church the following weekend to meet one-on-one with anyone who wanted to for a healing ceremony they had. With all of that said, of course as the police chief, I want to do anything I can to make this community feel safe. However, without going into detail, this particular officer-involved shooting is complex. And we have cases that intertwine with that very complex case. And I don't know how many of you are aware of Marcy's Law, but it is a very serious law that's in place, and it's for very good reason. Not going to go into the layers of the law, but just to give you an idea of another reason we're being very mindful of what involvement we have in releasing information is, and I'll just read it verbatim. Under Marcy's Law, the Wisconsin Constitution provides crime victims the right to privacy, as well as the right to be treated with dignity, respect, courtesy, sensitivity, and fairness. And I want to emphasize the word sensitivity. We need to be sensitive to the victims in our cases that live in this community. So moving forward, we're going to be very careful with that. And I would hope that this board and our community understands that with the individuals that lived in the areas directly impacted by these incidents, they seem to understand. So I'd be happy to take any questions, and if I can answer them, I will.
Okay, yeah, Derek?
No, and I appreciate the outreach in particular to the community that is impacted the most on that. And with your statement there too, that's, like I say, I'm not looking for any details, just very broad on the public record. This is where you can find pretty much the information you just provided. If you'd want to do it again while it's on the agenda, then people can kind of take it where they want it from there.
Yeah, what I would strongly recommend, first of all, if people want to know, and I pass this along to Carlene, if people want to know how we at OPD handle an officer-involved critical incident, we have that policy on our website. We follow it verbatim. In fact, in my emergency management box I have in the back of my squad, I have that policy. I'm going to pull it, we're going to follow it verbatim. These are very intense, complicated cases. So we're going to do what our community knows what we're going to do. As far as providing information, what we have done, obviously a lot of people are on Facebook, and that just seems to be where the friction is the most. So what we've done is we've taken whatever DOJ is releasing, we try to re-release it on our Facebook. But we're not going to use our words. It's not going to come from us. We are just going to say, hey, this is what DOJ is releasing. While we were sitting in this meeting, I was actually on DOJ's website and was unaware that they had popped in this new update, so we will be happy to share that on our Facebook. But as far as this case goes now, eventually, just like any other officer-involved critical incident, it's going to take a while for all that information to be put in documents. Those documents will go to the DA's office for review. That's going to take some time. I have no idea how long it will take. And then eventually DOJ will release the reports. And you can see, obviously this one isn't on their website right now, but if you go on DOJ's website, you will see cases that they have released reports on. So we can try to follow it the best we can to inform the public that this information's out there when it's released.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Let's go to 10 then, if that's it. 10, report of village officers, village administrator report. It's in the packet, was in the packet. 10B is Director of Finance report on cash, billing permits, impact fees, connection fees. That was in our packet. If anybody's got any questions, I'm sure Lisa will do her best to answer. Otherwise, we'll go to C, Village Department Head, Staff, Consultant comments. Anybody?
I have something.
All right, Candy's got something.
I'm gonna get my mic out here.
There we go. You got 3 minutes.
Yep, 3 minutes. I already told myself. So I just wanted to take a few minutes, hopefully less than 3, to thank the staff and community for their help with the recent election. So we're just gonna give you some quick stats. As of Friday, November 4th, the village had 7,665 registered voters. And during the in-person voting, or early voting, we call it, we processed 811 in-person voters. And during that time, we processed 57 registrations. On election day, 6,311 people cast their ballots in this election. 467 voter registrations were also completed, which is outstanding. And I just want to say some of those are new. Some of those may just have been residents that moved addresses within the village. 2,108 absentee ballots were processed. So that's nearly 26% of our total voting population. So I've decided to modify the saying, it takes a village to raise a child, to it takes a village to conduct an election. Countless hours go into preparing for an election, now more so than ever before. I want to provide an overview of just some of the people involved and provide them with the necessary and official shout out they all deserve. So first of all, the chief election inspectors, I'm going to name these guys out because they have to take a lot of training. Judith, Maggie, Mark, and Liz were our chief inspectors here in the village. They're the ones that ran the polling place on election day, dealt with the day-to-day operation, or the day's operations, and oversaw the election workers. They documented the story of the election and made sure all the required documents were completed and the procedures were followed. It was a long day for them, as some of them worked all day. So thank you to them. The many election workers, which I would be way over 3 minutes, so I'm not going to name them all individually, but whether they helped register voters, check them in at the poll books, provided them with a ballot, helped process absentees, provided the voter with their I voted sticker, or stayed to the very end to count the ballot and balance the results. We couldn't do that without you. The Village Hall staff, Sue, John, Melissa, Leanne, or new Leanne, Lisa, and Elise for helping with the many tasks and the prep that went on during the election. The mailing of the absentees, the folding of the documents, the alphabetizing and the organizing of the absentees. Listening to my election day countdown and not grumbling, at least out loud, about my detailed procedures. Many of these staff members also helped out on election day to provide the much needed breaks of our election workers, and so they could grab a bite to eat. I know the extra foot traffic put a burden on all of their normal duties, but they continued on without complaint and did an outstanding job. Like Lauren stated at the last meeting, investing in a great staff will benefit the village long term. Another perfect example implemented. And Martin for my listening ear and offering support wherever needed. Public Works Department, Jeff, Nick, Lauren, Jeff J, Kieran, and Mac for their department's assistance with helping us set up the village or the polling locations, setting up the message boards, and borrowing some equipment. The Police Department, Lieutenant Schaub, Sergeant Nihas, Sergeant Hatfield, Officers Lehman, Bollig, and Brockton, right? Brockton? They put up the voter-only signage throughout the downtown and securely and safely transported the election material and machines to the church location. They were ready to assist at any time from the wee early morning hours to the late in the evening. And I want to give a special shout out to Chief Pagenkoff for working behind the scenes and reviewing an emergency plan and offering her suggestions and support to the clerk's office on safety measures during election day. The People's United Methodist Church for letting us use their space for a polling location. I don't know where we would put all those other people if we didn't have that place. The voters for being patient and kind and coming out to vote. Peggy for being the support staff for the chief election inspector at the church location, coming in early to transport ballots to polling locations and assembling the machines and helping to gather election material to transport to the county. And last, but certainly not least, Joy, the village's deputy clerk. Joy's hard work is really what keeps me sane. She welcomes everyone to the election team, makes sure that everyone is scheduled and knows where to report to, always has a name tag, and always is making sure everyone's taking the appropriate training and has filed their oath of office. She also listens to my what ifs and or what do you think about this scenarios, and always provides useful feedback. So since my 3 minutes probably are up, I say with great sincerity, thank you to all of you. I'm so very grateful to be involved with this village in conducting elections and could not do it without you all. So if I missed anyone, I'm very sorry, but thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Candy.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Candy.
All right.
I have a stat too.
Yep.
No.
So I looked at Candy's time card this
Oh,
morning.
come on.
She had 124 hours in the last 2 weeks, which is an average of 12 hours a day for every weekday or work day.
Oh my gosh.
So she missed herself in that
No.
credit. She deserves it.
Yes.
Give her a round of applause.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Mike. Saw your hand.
So the numbers flew by me quickly, but did you say that we had roughly 3/4 of the voters came out and voted in the
Yeah.
midterm election?
If you take the, I always calculate in the new registrations, right? We had about a 77% turnout. 77.61 with new registrations. If we wouldn't have counted those new registrations, it would have been nearly 84 using that 7,600.
That's crazy.
Good.
And they moved through here pretty well, so.
Can I just say, I highly recommend working the polls if you've never done it before. It is fascinating and a wonderful peek at how our democracy works. I love doing it. I didn't do it this time, but there's something about it that makes you feel good, and it really is educational. So if you can do it at all, do it at least once.
All right. All right, let's go to 10D, which is Village Board comments. I have a grant update. I wish Jeff was here. Jeff and I wrote another DNR grant for trees for 2023, and we have gotten that. So more trees, the better, I think, in the village. So we'll continue to plant that. And then I'm just going to say something personal. If you saw my post on Saturday, this will be my last term on the village board. I feel I've done what I wanted to do, and I'm going to go look for new things to do. So get your nomination papers ready, people. Anybody else?
Which you can't circulate until December 1.
Yeah. Anybody else got anything they want to share? All right, so let's go to 11, announcements, miscellaneous, upcoming meetings. All right, 12, we're going to closed session. So I think we need a motion and a second to go. Yeah, Jenna?
I was just gonna move.
All right, yeah, please. Can we get a second to go? Derek's hand. All right, all in favor, say
Nope,
aye.
It's gotta be roll call.
Oh, roll call, okay.
Glish?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Wunsch? Wunsch?
Oh, I didn't hear that. Yes.
Peterson?
Yes.
Belo?
Yes.
Van Campen?
Yes.
And Beschen?
Yes.
Okay, we'll go into closed session.